So I've had a few more weeks of experience on the Omnipod 5, and I wanted to post some updates and also share some helpful things that have really made the experience better for me, and I think could be helpful for any of you who are maybe struggling with it or would like to just brainstorm how things work with somebody else, which I'm always down to do because I feel like each time I hear stuff, I learn something new about how to use it. So Omnipod 5, I started off this whole experience really disliking it. In terms of, I had just transitioned from MDI. I'm still new to type 1 diabetes. It's about 8 months now. So this was my first pump. This was my, a big change for me. But I will say that with each passing week, or really each new pod, I do like it more and more. I really like it now, and I don't think I would want to go back to MDI. So some of the things that I've learned, and this video is going to be all over the place. I'll just post the helpful things that come to my mind that hopefully help you too, or that you'd like to brainstorm, because I'm always interested in doing that. The first thing for me, and maybe for you, was I've had to dramatically change my insulin to carb ratios and my correction factors as compared to when I was on MDI. Now, I also want to stress that, when I was first doing this, I was hesitant to change it because I was scared that I would go low. I also thought maybe I'm exiting the honeymoon phase and this is just a greater amount of insulin that I need. Actually, I don't think that's the case. And the reason I say that is because if you look at your total daily insulin on the Omnipod 5, it'll still tell you how much you're using per day. Right now on the Omnipod 5, I'm using typically between 15 and 20 units per day. And with MDI, I was using around 14 to 18 or 19. So it's very, very similar. It's just the way that you get insulin is very different. And so it's kind of a shift in your perspective. So anyway, when I was on MDI, I took 8 units of Tresiba per day. That was my basal insulin. And then I would typically take like 2 units for my big meals and maybe a unit or less than that for snacks. But like I said, my insulin to carb ratio was 1 to 50 across the board on MDI, no matter what time of day it was. So it was, it's pretty easy because it was basically just do that ratio and I'm done. What I found on the Omnipod 5 is that my ratios actually need to be much stronger. So I actually have 3 insulin to carb ratios now. My morning insulin to carb is 1 to 25, so that's half as much as it, or I guess twice as strong as it was. I'm 1 to 33 middle of the day, and then around like 1 to 40 or so in the evening. So it sounds like way more insulin, and it is, because when I do, let's say I have a big bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, instead of taking 2 units, I'm taking 4. And at first it was terrifying, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm taking so much insulin. But what you start to realize is that with the way that the Omnipod 5 is going to automatically shut off your basal delivery when you do take a mealtime bolus, your mealtime insulin you're going to need more, because it's covering the food, but also that period of time in which you would normally have been getting your Tresiba or whatever in the background, you're now not getting that. So I guess long story short is try not to worry necessarily about needing to give yourself more insulin for meals or increasing your correction factors, because what you'll notice is that overall, a lot of times you're going to look at your total daily insulin and it's going to be similar to what it was. It just feels very different because essentially your basal is lower, and therefore you need to make up for that with the mealtime insulin or the correction doses that you take. So that's been a huge shift in perspective. So I'm not scared anymore to really take that 3 or 4 unit mealtime bolus as I would have been with MDI, because I need it and it actually does work properly. The other thing to consider is, so it's totally unrelated tip. So that's the one thing. The first thing is to feel comfortable playing around with your insulin to carb ratios, your correction factors, and don't necessarily worry right off the bat if you feel like you're taking just ridiculously big mealtime doses. Take a look at your overall total daily insulin dose, compare it to what you were doing before, and then you can start to kind of get a feel for like, am I actually needing more insulin, or does the system just work very different than what I'm used to? The second tip is regarding highs. So, and what I mean is, let's say you have a meal and you end up at like 200 not long after the meal, which I don't like to be in that range. And so my default oftentimes was to exercise right after it. And I still do sometimes. But it's important that you understand what's happening with the Omnipod when you do exercise. So let's say I'm 200, I just took a mealtime insulin dose, and I'm just annoyed that I'm going higher or that I'm at a certain level. A lot of times I'll go for a walk or I'll do some squats or something like that, and I'll get myself to come down from 200 to 120 or 130 very, very quickly. I'll see that, I'll say, okay, good, like I'm back in a range that I would like to be in, and then I'll sit down and I'll realize that as I go back to work or whatever, the number just really almost instantly creeps back up again. Before I know it, I'm at 160, 170 with an arrow up again. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I just got it down to 120. What you start to realize is that if you look at your graph that shows when basal is paused, it'll always pause when you drop that quickly as a result of exercise. And so the system doesn't know that you're coming down in terms of your blood sugar because you're exercising. So basically it's just going to do everything it can to smooth that drop because it thinks that you might go low. And so you're going to see, that red line, which indicates that your basal delivery has stopped if you were to click on the graph in the bottom right of your Omnipod 5 app. And so if you do that, you'll probably have a similar experience for me. You'll come down from that high pretty quickly, but then as soon as you stop exercising, you'll go back up because the system is going to pause basal until it thinks you need it again, which is when it goes back up, and then it's too slow, and then you're kind of in this weird, annoying roller coaster. So the solution that I have for that is to first understand that that's happening, and then I like to either do a little bit less exercise or do the exercise kind of in segments. So essentially, I don't want my blood sugar to come down quite as quickly because I know that the system is going to pause it. And so I've gotten in the habit of really looking at that graph quite a bit. And for me, it's like I can get my sugar down, let's say 10 points in just a few minutes without the Omnipod 5 pausing basal delivery. And then if I rest or if I sit down, it's going to keep working to bring that blood sugar down lower and lower in a little bit of a smoother fashion. So I won't get as much of a kind of a jerky up and down experience as I might if I really went hard on my exercise and got it down to the number I wanted to right off the bat. So you're gonna have to play with that and just get a feel for how much impacts the basal delivery and how much you can actually do in conjunction with it working properly. The other thing is to really not let it get high in the first place. And so kind of counterintuitive to what I just said, but if you were to eat a meal and let's say you didn't think you took quite enough insulin, if you were to go for a walk right away and prevent that number from getting up high right off the bat, if you kind of stayed level, then when you stop, the system is likely going to keep giving you that basal insulin that you would need to keep it at a good number. So ultimately, the system seems to like flat lines, whether it's high or whether it's low. And so if you can prevent it from getting high in the first place, the system's going to kind of work with you a little bit better. When you do go high, you just kind of have to be a little bit patient in terms of how you bring it down. And so that's just one thing to consider that I found and I think could be helpful for anybody who might have a similar thing. Let's see, what else? With exercise, I've been using the activity mode. I definitely recommend turning that on more than 30 minutes before you're going to start something, because those micro adjustments for basal delivery, if you're not paying attention, you don't have activity mode on, they will still be going pretty much right up to when you're about to exercise, and that can really make you more sensitive and cause lower blood sugars quicker when you're exercising. So definitely give that some time, 30 to 40 minutes before you're going to do some physical activity. That's what worked for me. The other thing that I found in terms of like foods that really get my blood sugar into a good spot for exercise. So I like to exercise around like blood sugar of 140 to 150. That seems to be the ideal number for me. A lot of times I'll be cruising around at 100, a few minutes or let's say an hour before I'm going to exercise. And my go-to snack is typically like rice cakes with some peanut butter. The rice cakes are a nice fast-acting carb that gets the blood sugar up nice and high, but not too high. And then the protein kind of keeps it up a little bit higher. So that combination works really, really well for me. It's also not a ton of calories, the peanut butter is, but the rice cakes aren't. And so it's not counteracting my actual exercise goals too. So play around with that if you want to kind of modulate your blood sugars. And then I put some glucose tabs in my exercise shorts. So I'm just carrying them at all times. And if I need them, I'll pop a couple. But it's been really, really good, and I've needed quite a bit less of those glucose tabs during workouts with the Omnipod 5. Let's see, other tips. So the other thing that I've noticed is in terms of putting on a pod, I use mostly my legs, and I do rotate sides because I'm pretty careful. I don't want scar tissue development or any of that kind of stuff. I've found that it really makes a big difference if you pinch the skin and lift it up quite a bit from the muscle underneath as you insert the pod. There's a couple that I didn't do it so well, and I could definitely feel the cannula kind of shooting down into the muscle, and that one pretty much hurt every time I walked for that 3-day period that I had that pod on. So definitely makes a big difference if you really make sure you squeeze that skin around it before you insert the cannula and just kind of hold it there until you hear that click. That makes it much more comfortable. It seems like it's made the insulin work better too. It seems like it's getting into my system quicker and more smoothly, and I've had no issues with that. So I think that's just a good thing to consider if you're not already doing it. If you're having any issues with the pod sticking on, you can use an overpatch. So I use Skin Tack, the Omnipod Skin Tack patches, but also I use Skin Tack, the actual, I don't even have one here, but they're individual wipes that you can kind of put on your skin before you put the overpatch on, and they make a huge difference, especially for the for the Dexcom too. So I have my Dexcom here, and this one's, I think it's almost like 7 days old, but it's still, there's no fraying on the edges and it doesn't move. So that Skin Tack and then putting the overpatch on top of it with either a Dexcom or an Omnipod has made a gigantic difference. So I strongly recommend anybody who's having an issue with the stuff staying on or it's sort of like folding up on the edges and just looking messy, give that Skin Tack a try. It's really, really helpful. Yeah, so I think that's it for now. It's like I said, it's been much better. As I learn more, I'll keep posting, but hopefully some of this stuff is helpful.